mount escapes lesson now. Last little segment, we're just gonna focus on submission counters. Now, most of the time, we're just gonna go over the most common way people catch you off guard. And this is quite a kind of like a nice little trick higher grades always do, which is just focusing on wrist isolations. So, anytime Tamara's able to pin my wrist down or open up my arm, the likelihood of her submissions go up by quite a bit. Usually because we fall for the bait of trying to like release our wrist, then she'll get an arm wrap and then like maybe modified, go to arm locks, go for back takes. There's loads of different techniques that she can pull off, right? Now the other way is by using underhooks and kind of walking her underhooks up, again, opening up my elbow. Now she can go for things for like arm triangles and all that kind of stuff. So knowing that, it's really important that we really keep our elbows glued to our body into safe positionings. That's what I meant from our elbow escape lesson. We learned this kind of like frame and this elbow. So now if she tries to do any of those submissions, she doesn't really have anything set up. She's gonna look to try to wrist pin you for most of the time. And that's about it. If she tries to go for an arm lock, there's no arm locks there. See, I can just block her and stop her from climbing up. There's no arm triangles, no Americanas. So really all you're gonna have to deal with is the ability of her trying to pin your wrists. The wrist pin is a really strong counter against our safe positioning. So if she does do this, we need to be quite quick about it. We don't wanna hug onto the arm and let her isolate and grab our wrists like this. Grab my wrist there. Yeah, and keep that around my head. So that's how they usually do it, okay? And now she'll be able to strip, and now I have both of my arms strapped, you see? So we have to be super quick. As soon as we realize this is happening, we're gonna do a big bump, push that off, pull our elbow towards our lats really quickly, and try to get out of there. So like this, and then go back to our safe position again. I don't care how many times you have to do it, because it's so crucial, right? The earlier, the better. As she's scratching that, I'm doing this. Never let that happen. Maybe try to protect your own wrist afterwards and then work towards your other counters from there. They're bound to move on to something else after you give them a couple of chances. Now, if we do get caught out, right? Let's say she does pin my wrist and she goes for a traditional Americana. So where she goes around, secures the wrist and starts cycling in. So Americana counters now. So the first one is, I'd recommend is just trying to give a sharp push underneath the person's armpit and pulling that elbow towards your rib cage, ideally in between this little gap if you can. So often we'll go like this, push, slide that in, and that should be able to break. Now I'd recommend you turning to the other side and working towards your elbow escapes from there. So again, we're using those bridges mechanics that we learned where we trap the arm and try to push on the lat, just so we can slip our elbow, release the wrist, and then move on to our better counters like the kipping escape or the elbow escape. I'll give you one other counter to the Americana, which is you can also grab your wrist like this and try to pull it, and kind of, if you're a bit stronger than your partner, you should be able to pull it and then try to almost like, it becomes almost like a wrist lock on Tamara if she's not using the proper technique, which is using her head. So if someone's not using the head, you can just kind of pull this and just try to like yank it, or you can also pull and try to bridge off to the side and then kind of slip it out. But that first one should be the only one you really need to use. Moving on, probably the next most common one is the arm locks, where Tamara gets a good elbow position on us. She slides that leg up towards there and then inverts her leg and then threads that through. Now, we have early and really late counters to the armbar. Really early, okay, when we feel this arm is isolated like this, we should be doing what we call a leg whip, which is before she cuts the angle, I'm gonna use this hand to push whatever I can and kind of whip my leg around, and as she slides up, I should be able to slip out my elbow and then move in to some sort of guard, like a one-leg X, so we can start threatening leg attacks. It's a great way to just kind of like be aware of arm lock situations, because she always has to slide up to be able to go for an arm lock. So before she gets those legs over, you're already kind of doing that. Later on, if she does get all the way through and steps over our head, boom. We're trying to intercept that leg and go to what we call a kind of rear naked choke kind of defense. She'll probably be elbow deep in a tight position like this, trying to rip your arm out. And again, you could attempt a second leg whip from here where we go like this and then try to draw our elbow towards the mat and try to slip through. Or we can go into elbow escapes approach. We turn around, sorry, it's this way, where we can try to get our elbow underneath the far leg and stuff it into half guard, slide up, and then turn our thumb up to escape. Again, those are the two I recommend at the beginning level. You'll teach you to stay safe, protect your arms, and you got a late and an early option from there. If you want more counters, we do have our arm lock lesson you can take a look at. But moving on, the next kind of submission people love for mounts is the arm triangle. So this is a scenario where Tamara has a crossface and an underhook on us, and she starts walking that underhook up until my arm gets isolated here, and then she can go off to the side where she's trying to get a clean finish. Now, just mind the mic, sorry, just loosen it up a little bit, perfect. Now, before she gets off, or even after she gets off, our main goal here is to be opening up this space for us to be able to breathe. So the more this is pushed into our neck, the more of a tighter submission there is. So I recommend a ball and chain kind of grip like this, where I just have socket and this one's pushing. And I'm gonna try to open my neck out and push this down and grab this arm so I can have breathing room from here. So even if it's quite tight, as long as I can keep this artery safe, we should be able to survive. And anytime anything becomes loose, we're trying to swing this arm back and kind of shrimp into our partner to try to replace some sort of guard. So again, we'll be here. We managed to get our arm isolated. So instead, I'm just gonna open my chest, turn onto my side and go like this. She's often gonna attempt to go to the back or something from here. So be careful, bring that arm around as soon as you feel any movement happening. If she's being patient and just staying there, okay, trying to go for an arm triangle instead, arm triangle, yeah, just stay there, be patient, right? But as soon as you feel the release of the grip happening to go to a transition, that's the time that I would start swimming around and trying to slip through and possibly even ending up with your own attacks afterwards. Those are probably the most common submissions attempts people are gonna kind of try on you. I'll add one more just because we've done a lot of elbow escape kind of theory and bridges as well. And sometimes our arms just get isolated either over here, and people often go to a No-Gi Ezekiel where they reach around your neck, they grab their own biceps, and then they try to sneak that wrist through the neck, this wrist, to put pressure on you like this, right? Now, respect this choke because it is quite strong if it's fully locked in, right? So, for example, if I just leave my arms around down there and don't respect it, I will get choked. So, whenever you feel those hands coming in, try to intercept it or try to unflare this elbow. So those are the two choices we have. So for her to finish, she has to kind of flare this elbow and get a good position. So if I pull this down and do a bridge, for example, maybe I'll unwind the choke. And then I can bring my arm in here and try to block that fist or that wrist from coming into my neck. So those two techniques should keep you safe. But as long as you recognize that choke, you should be safe, all right? Just don't think that you can just, because it's loose at the beginning. So often people feel safe and they feel like they're gonna get out and then it just gets tighter and tighter. But recognizing it would be the first counter. And that concludes our mounts lesson. So in the first segment, we just learned how we get mounted in most instances. Then we looked at some elbow escapes, bridging concepts, and the last bit is the submission escapes. So hopefully you have a good insight on being comfortable on those mount scenarios now.